Hope your work week is off to a good start. This is the daily report for November 29th. There is a heightened sense of global concern among health authorities amid reports of Omicron. We have more on this new variant from a researcher in South Africa later on in the program. Here first is the broader pandemic update with our Consultative. So just start us off.
Sunny, we're starting off the last Monday of the month with over 3,000 daily COVID-19 infections. That's 3,309 to be exact, tallied as of 12 a.m. And that is the highest caseload for Monday. It also includes more than 3,200 domestic transmissions with over 20 imported cases. So over the weekend, we had infections in the 4,000s or slightly below. So we are seeing a drop this Monday. However, compared to last Monday, you can see that on-week jump in daily cases. The capital Seoul reported almost 1,400 new transmissions, Gyeonggi-do Province 910, Incheon 233, and also Busan here with a triple digit. A surge on Jeju Island as well, including infections linked to traveling. Now with that, Korea has a total number of 444,200 COVID-19 cases and also 3,580 coronavirus-related fatalities. And if we move over to the number of patients that are currently in severe or critical condition, that number has dropped slightly from the day before. However, for 5 straight days, this number has been at above 600. On to our vaccination figures, 82.8% of the nation's population has received at least one COVID-19 shot and 79.7% is fully vaccinated. So we are approaching 80% on that front. Let's also take a look at the numbers abroad. A rise by close to 390,000 new infections in the span of 24 hours and close to 4,700 additional fatalities. If we move over to the 20 countries with the highest number of total infections, we've got here one country that has hit the 5 million mark in the past day, which is Italy, and the U.S. is closely approaching 50 million cases in total as well. And those are the general updates I have for now, but I'll see you back in a bit. Sunny?
All right, so thank you for now. Right, the presence of the heavily mutated Omicron variant is being met with much global concern despite the absence of empirical evidence regarding the risks it may pose. For more, I have Kim Yeon-sung here in the studio. Yeon-sung, welcome back.
Thank you for having me, Sunny.
Right, then let's begin with what has been shared thus far about Omicron.
Right, so this new strain has been classified as a variant of concern by the WHO. South Africa first notified the global health body regarding this new strain on November 24th. But the earliest cases were actually detected in Botswana weeks ago. Already, the virus has spread to at least 13 countries, including the UK, Italy, Belgium, the Netherlands, Australia, and Israel. The strain has also landed in North America, with Canada detecting its first 2 cases on Sunday local time. Since then, a growing number of countries have reported the presence of Omicron within their borders. Governments around the world are scrambling to draw up new prevention guidelines to counter this new emerging threat.
Right. And Yeon-sung, what are health experts saying about this new variant?
Well, there's still so much unknown about this new strain. Well, first, some say that it could be more vaccine resistant and more transmissible compared to other strains. Doctors in South Africa, though, reported very mild symptoms among their Omicron patients there. Most suffered from fatigue and muscle pain that lasted a few days, while none have reported the more disturbing COVID-19 symptoms like the loss of smell or taste. Still, countries are still on edge about the possibility of Omicron slipping through their borders. Top U.S. health official Anthony Fauci said that although no Omicron cases have been reported in the U.S. as of yet, it will inevitably come and possibly spark a 5th wave of COVID.
Right, I see. And before we move on any further, Yeon-sung, could you tell us a bit about the background behind the name Omicron?
Right, so the WHO is moving down the Greek alphabet to name each of their new strains, and Omicron happens to be the 15th letter of the Greek alphabet. WHO has skipped over the letters nu and she, however, for reasons unspecified. You know, earlier this year, I remember interviewing an expert on the emergence of the Lambda variant, which was actually the 10th mutant strain to be detected. And the expert said that eventually there are going to be so many COVID-19 variants that there are not going to be enough letters in the Greek alphabet to name them all. Take a listen to the interview I did more than 3 months ago.
There's already more than 10 types of known variants. There are 24 letters in the Greek alphabet, with omega as the last. But there will be so many variants that we'll need to use all 24 letters naming them, and perhaps need another alphabet for the new strains.
Now, seeing as there are only 9 letters in the Greek alphabet left, his prediction is close to being realized.
Right. Hopefully that will not be the case, though. Yeon-sung, so how are officials here in the country responding to this latest challenge?
Well, they've currently sealed off borders to 8 countries in the southern Africa region that are deemed to be at the highest risk. This includes Botswana, Eswatini, Lesotho, Mozambique, Namibia, South Africa, Zimbabwe, and Malawi. Detecting this new variant is said to be a challenge for many PCR test kits that we currently have available. So right now, authorities are trying to bide their time to figure out what to do when the virus eventually arrives on the country's shores.
All right, I see, Yeon-sung. Thank you for now, but do stay with us for the broader talks. Ahead of an extensive COVID-19 response meeting on this Monday afternoon, Health Minister Kwon Duk-chul shared his words of concern regarding the current situation on the local front earlier on this Monday morning. I have Soa back at the desk with details on that. Soa, tell us what you have.
Well, Sunny, according to the government's originally planned return to normalcy scheme, another relaxing of measures would be up in 2 weeks from now. But while mentioning positive economic indices such as private spending 4 weeks into the first phase of this strategy, the Health Minister Kwon Duk-chul expressed this concern.
The threat posed by COVID-19 to our gradual return to normal is growing faster than we expected. The number of infections has reached the 4,000 level, and the number of patients in severe or critical condition is also rising quickly, leading to over 1,000 patients who are on hospital bed waitlist.
As of 12 a.m. this Monday, 1,149 patients are waiting to be assigned hospital beds, close to 480 of those having waited more than a day, and some 200 have even been waiting for 4 days. Almost 480 of those are patients in their 70s or above, and some 670 have existing health conditions such as high blood pressure or diabetes. 86.7% of ICU beds are occupied in the metropolitan region, another rise from 85.4% the day before. That's 42 beds in Seoul and Gyeonggi-do province each, to be exact, and 12 in Incheon. It's not looking better in other places, though. As of Sunday afternoon, the city of Daejeon had all 25 ICU beds occupied, and the administrative city of Sejong 5 out of 6. So while treatment has been actually systemized so that patients in the greater Seoul area can be easily transported to nearby other regions, that's not looking to be an easy task now, as well as we are seeing the case in Daejeon and the Sejong city. Now, given this situation, the health minister called on active cooperation from the nation's public on basic prevention measures, and also again called on active cooperation on the booster shot front. He asked for that cooperation to be on the similar level as the cooperation that people have showed during the first and second doses. And furthermore, he vowed the government's preemptive efforts regarding the Omicron variant as well.
Right. And how are Korea's counterparts countering this new variant, Soa?
Well, many countries were quick to respond, and many of them have responded with travel restrictions. Israel was the first nation to announce a complete ban of entries by foreigners, and that's in effect from midnight Sunday. The government is looking to keep the measures for 14 days as of now. Israel has put all of Africa, with the exception of North American countries, on a red list, with Israelis returning from these countries to put in special isolation. The EU was quick to make a call for member states on Friday, requesting a suspension of air travel and urging them to act swiftly, decisively, and stand united, which many countries are already doing. The Netherlands, for instance, which experienced chaos at its airport due to the detection of the Omicron variant on flights from South Africa, decided to tighten measures like limiting private gatherings and access hours to specific venues, as well as this.
100% of the people who return will be contacted. We also asked the municipalities to visit all the people at home to check whether they're really isolating.
And here's also fresh concern by the European Commission president, who is calling on speed as more cases are being identified in Europe and around the world. Let's take a listen to this as well.
We take this Omicron variant very serious, and we know that we are now in a race against time. And the scientists and manufacturers need 2 to 3 weeks to have a full picture about the quality of the mutations of this Omicron variant.
Right, and against that backdrop, so what other measures are being implemented by governments worldwide?
Well, let's take a look at the UK, which has not been too strict on this recent Omicron variant when it comes to travel restrictions. So let's take a listen to the Prime Minister there on this latest issue.
But we now need to go further and implement a proportionate testing regime for arrivals from across the whole world. So, we're not going to stop people travelling. I want to stress that. We're not going to stop people travelling, but we will require anyone who enters the UK to take a PCR test by the end of the second day after their arrival and to self-isolate until they have a negative result.
Now, meanwhile, there are news streaming in from many countries around the world, some of them confirming this new variant and some of them having suspected cases. France, for instance, says its health minister said on Sunday the variant may be already circulating within the country. And as a preventative measure, along with other European Union countries, France has suspended flights from 7 southern African countries, that is, and also in Asia. The Philippines has also come up with new restrictions. So many countries are now on the stance that it's better safe than sorry. But the disappointment and inconvenience, of course, has been felt among travelers. So let's take a listen to this.
After being stranded for 2 years because of COVID, not seeing your family, my parents were deathly ill, you know. So I had to come back when the borders were open to come and see them. And now, you know, only to realize, well, it's happening all over again.
Right, and those words of disappointment, Yanseng, have also been echoed by authorities in South Africa, I understand. Tell us more.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm actually glad you mentioned it because obviously the countries who are imposing these travel restrictions thought it to be a necessary measure, but for countries on the receiving end, there has been a lot of controversy surrounding this decision. So South African president actually said that he was deeply disappointed by the country's choices to prohibit travel from South African countries. Take a listen.
Now, these restrictions are completely unjustified and unfairly discriminate against our country and our Southern African sister countries.
Right, so because South Africa was actually one of the first to report this new strain of variant to the WHO, they're actually feeling the full brunt of this impact on its economic and tourism sector. Travels have been freezed ahead of Christmas, which is actually one of their most lucrative seasons. And some experts say that this type of measure does more harm than good because it ultimately discourages countries to detect and report new strains if new ones happen to emerge in the future. Also, a lot of countries in Africa have been pinched for COVID-19 vaccines during this pandemic, and vaccine distribution has been heavily skewed towards the wealthy and developed countries. And scientists say that now the world is seeing the full effects of the vaccine hoarding with the emergence of Omicron. But it's the countries in Africa who are penalized when they were the ones who were starved of shots in the first place.
And I want to add to that a South African doctor who was actually part of identifying this variant has said that the hype that's been created in the media does not correlate with the clinical picture. That's a quote from this doctor. And again, being against these travel bans. But on the other hand, when it comes to the Delta variant before, we saw how there was a little late response that led to this strain to become the dominant strain in many countries, leading to more infections, resurgences, and deaths. So I believe this is not a discrimination against any country, but rather a faster response this time than in other cases.
Right. All right. So as always, thank you very much for that. And Yunsen, thank you. See you tomorrow. Top defense officials from Seoul and Washington are poised to meet later this week here in the capital city to address issues of bilateral concern, including the transfer of wartime operational control, which has been sought by the Moon administration. Our Kim Yo-san reports.
On Thursday, Seoul and Washington will hold their annual security consultative meeting in the South Korean capital. The key issue is whether the allies will advance discussions on the timing of the envisioned transfer of wartime operational control. The transfer is something the South Korean government has been pushing for, but the process, which includes a three-stage assessment to verify Seoul's capabilities to lead wartime operations, has slowed due to various reasons, including the pandemic. A South Korean government official explained late last week that prior consultations had proceeded in a, quote, very amicable manner, unlike last year's meeting under the former Trump administration. Expressing expectations for progress, the official added that this year's meeting will approach the issue more positively. The 53rd SEM will be the last chance for the Moon Jae-in administration to make progress on regaining wartime OPCON before his term ends in May 2022, although a complete transition won't be possible by then. The allies are also likely to address ways to broaden military cooperation into wider fields, including space and cyberspace. China-related issues will also be on the agenda. Seoul's defense ministry also says Defense Minister Seok will explain South Korea's position on an end-of-war declaration when he sits down with his U.S. counterpart, Lloyd Austin. Kim Yo-san, Arirang News.
In other news, temperatures are looking to plunge later this week here on the local front as Korea ushers in the months of winter. Our Choi Min-jung has more on the forecast.
November is coming to an end, and so is autumn. Parks and streets are covered with fallen leaves, filling the atmosphere with late autumn colors. However, the weather is expected to change rapidly in the coming days. Temperatures are forecast to drop below 0 degrees Celsius starting December after the country sees rain nationwide on Tuesday. In particular, some regions will see temperatures drop close to minus 10 degrees in midweek after rain on Tuesday.
Beginning December, temperatures will drop below 0 degrees Celsius as cold air from the north moves south. During the first week, morning temperatures will drop below minus 5 degrees Celsius in the central and northern inland areas, including Seoul.
This winter in particular is expected to see the early arrival of a cold wave, and temperatures are forecast to fluctuate severely.
Currently, La Niña is developing, and when this happens, temperatures during the winter tend to be lower than usual. Also because there is little RTC ice, we're expecting a very cold December and January this winter.
The country's precipitation level is likely to decrease compared to previous years. However, with the cold wave approaching, experts predict that there will be significant regional variations, with heavy snowfall expected in regions on the west coast as well as on islands. Choi Min-jung, Arirang News.
Craving for change within a workplace may be common, but not all choose to quit their jobs over this desire. Well, a growing number of young Korean workers are putting this thought into action, and Shin Yeon tells us why.
Generation MZ, a common term used in South Korea that combines millennials and those in Generation Z. In other words, those born from the 1980s to 2010s. Most are in their 20s and 30s, meaning they make up a big portion of the workforce. But many of them have reported to quit their jobs within a year.
According to a survey by recruitment portal site Job Korea, more than 75% of those asked had experience of changing their full-time jobs. 3 out of 10 were found to have quit their jobs less than a year after starting them. Most said that the excessive workload meant they didn't have enough free time.
As an MZer myself, I gathered a few more young people from different backgrounds to ask one common question. What makes working so hard?
One person I asked said having no life outside of work was what pushed her to quit.
There was no time to invest in myself. I was like a machine. Getting up in the morning, going to work, I had lost my identity. That's why I don't regret quitting my job.
Others who changed jobs said they couldn't stand feeling useless.
It's important for me to be able to pitch my ideas freely and communicate even with the higher-ups.
I always wondered whether my work contributed to the company, whether anyone would notice if I went missing for a day. Whenever I felt like my performance could be replaced or neglected, I had the urge of quitting.
A psychology professor explained that what these people had mentioned was a common trend found in MZers.
Born into a digital era, MZers have access to so much information. They compare their situation with others. If someone on the internet looks happier at his or her workplace, MZers not only feel deprived, but are intrigued to find out more about that place. That's why many frequently change jobs.
As MZers make up a big portion of the workforce, companies have had no choice but to accommodate them. A recruiting manager from a major company who was asked to remain anonymous said it costs companies a lot to educate new employees who end up leaving, on average, within 3 years.
We asked MZers who wanted to quit so soon why. They said they felt unproductive, the tasks assigned to them weren't interesting. So we decided to allow people to experience different tasks at different departments.
Another company has decided to respond to MZers who demanded a good work-life balance.
So we've implemented flex time and also operate on early off work during the birthdays and quarter off work so that they can use their time and vacation freely.
An economics professor says Generation MZ's preference for quality time outside of work can help the economy in other ways.
Older generations didn't have as many channels to spend their money apart from basic necessities, but MZers have so many places to consume. In that sense, MZers are actually contributing to the economy by spending money outside of work.
So this trend of changing jobs frequently could be here to stay. 신예은, Arirang News.
Over in Los Angeles this past weekend, the BTS Army has been raiding the area amid the K-pop group's first live concert since the start of the pandemic. Our Kim Deon has the sights and sounds.
It was a spring day on a Thanksgiving weekend as Army and BTS were finally reunited face-to-face at BTS' first in-person concert in 2 years. Saturday at Los Angeles SoFi Stadium marked the first day of the Permission to Dance on Stage tour.
They haven't performed in 2 years with a live audience because of COVID and the pandemic and everything, so we're very, very excited.
I'm really excited for them because I know that they've been having a lot of difficulties, and I'm excited that they get the chance to finally meet ARMY again, and I'm really excited to be able to see them for the first time.
With performances in front of 50,000 people per night, the tour is planned to run for 4 nights in total here, but fans that couldn't get hold of a ticket also showed up to celebrate outside. No need for permission to dance here. Regardless of age, background, or country of origin, fans spread their love for the group like butter. It was reported that some 8,000 dedicated fans even flew in from South Korea to attend the event.
I had to come because it's the first concert in 2 years, so I took days off from work.
Outside the stadium, fans waited in lines for hours to pick up merchandise. To enter the stadium, they had to present proof of vaccination or a negative PCR test taken within the past 3 days, making the wait to enter even longer. This tour signals K-pop's return to the stage as life goes on, finally after these large concerts were halted around the globe. Similar dynamite performances are also in the pipeline for K-pop groups such as Monsta X and Twice as they plan to host in-person shows around the world in the coming months. Kim Do-yeon, Arirang News.
Let's take a look at what's going on in the world now.
A massive 7.5 magnitude earthquake shook the remote Amazon region of northern Peru on Sunday, with tremors being felt as far away as Lima. While the earthquake caused damage to homes near the epicenter, no casualties have been reported. Some residents left their homes as a precaution, while local news reports showed houses and buildings destroyed during the quake. According to the National Institute of Civil Defense, a total of 220 homes were affected, with 81 uninhabitable, while 75 were completely destroyed. 7 places of religious worship, including a 400-year-old church, were damaged. Peruvian President Pedro Castillo says he has ordered the immediate deployment of support personnel as he headed to the impacted regions via a military plane. Fashion's highest-profile black designer and the man behind some of the more renowned men's Louis Vuitton collection, Virgil Abloh, died at the age of 41 on Sunday. According to the French luxury goods giant, Abloh had been battling cancer privately for years. Abloh was also the designer behind the ever-so-popular Off-White brand, which LVMH bought a 60% stake in. His style allowed for a mix between streetwear and high-end fashion, with his influence including graffiti art, hip-hop, and skateboard culture. This past July, LVMH expanded his role with the company, giving him a mandate to launch new brands and partner with existing ones in a variety of sectors beyond just fashion. The American fashion designer also worked as a DJ and a visual artist, and had been with Louis Vuitton since March 2018. A heavy snowstorm in northern Spain over the weekend resulted in road closures as truck drivers were left stranded. According to Spain's traffic authorities, 139 roads across northern Spain were affected by the storm. Some truck drivers were stranded for at least 15 hours at a service station, unable to move.
Around 15 hours I have been stranded, 15 hours. And I don't know, it all depends on the weather. We may have to stay the entire day here.
Spain's transport minister said Saturday that 847 snowplows were operating and over 156,000 tons of sodium chloride and sea salt were on hand to battle the snowfall on roads and highways. However, the slow rollout of assistance may leave truck drivers stranded further until the roads are cleared. Lee Seung-jae, Arirang News.
Up next, we share with you a growing trend in the business arena here with regard to investments overseas. I have Ji Abby Lee here in the studio for details on that. Ji, welcome back.
Good afternoon, Sunny.
Right, so do start us off then.
So today we're going to be talking about domestic venture capital firms that are investing in U.S. startups led by Korean American entrepreneurs. That's because Korean investors are noticing that successful Korean American entrepreneurs are investing in their time, money, and advice on other entrepreneurs of Korean heritage, leading to positive chain reaction. The aim is to build bridges between Korean and American venture capital ecosystems, as well as to identify future unicorns. The term was first coined by Silicon Valley-based venture capitalist Eileen Lee back in 2013 and refers to a startup with more than $1 billion in valuation. San Jose-based Primer Satse Partners is due to finalize its second fund after raising 150 billion won, or about $127 million on November 19th. The fund is aimed at investing in startups founded by Korean American entrepreneurs. The VC is a result of Silicon Valley's Satse Partners and Korea's first startup accelerator, Primer, joining forces back in 2018. The co-founders of Satse are Lee Ki-ha and Greg Kwang-no Kim, who put together a $43 million fund and invested in some 50 Korean-American startups. The second fund's main beneficiaries will be companies in the pre-seed to Series A funding. The initial ticket size will range between 600 million and 3.6 billion won, or between 500,000 and $3 million. Ticket size is the amount of money a single VC invests, whereas round size is the total amount invested into the company at a single time. Now, these CEOs will not only make financial investments, but also provide management advice to startups led by fellow American entrepreneurs of Korean heritage.
Right. And speaking about that, G, do tell us a bit more about these startups led by Korean American entrepreneurs.
Sure. So if we're talking about the bigger startups that are investing their time and energy into mentoring smaller startups, let's focus on the big kahunas, namely Fiscal Note, Sandbird, and Noom. Tim Hwang launched Fiscal Note in spring of 2013 while still finishing his degree at Princeton. He deferred his attendance to Harvard Business School in order to start the company with two of his friends from high school. Valued at $1.4 billion as of May, the company is slated to debut on the NASDAQ in the first quarter of next year. Since its beginning as a state legislative tracking service, its clientele has expanded to include the Central Intelligence Agency, or the CIA, and the EV maker Tesla. Corporate messenger platform provider Sandbird and subscription-based healthcare startup Noom have also joined the ranks of unicorns that are stakeholders in the second fund.
Right, I see, the CIA. I was just thinking, I heard that interest in such ventures, G, is also being shown by government-run entities here in the country as well.
That's right, and it's very unique that it's happening at this point in time. So wholly domestic and even state-run financial institutions are looking to invest in Korean-American startups. Korea's Smilegate investment is big on investing in startups in the U.S., even though it doesn't yet have an American arm or affiliate. In late August, it participated in Sweet Technologies' Series A funding worth $17.8 million. Sweet is a provider of its namesake digital team collaboration tool. Other notable Korean-American-owned startups include ad tech company Moloko, maker of robot server Bear Robotics, AI-based forklift controller Motion to AI, and virtual reality content provider Amaze VR. Investments like these are also made through locally incorporated companies. Korea Development Bank, a state-owned lender, recently announced it will launch its own venture capital subsidiary dubbed KDB Silicon Valley in California. It's the first time a state-run Korean bank has set up a VC subsidiary abroad. KDB Silicon Valley, which has been open for over a week, began with a total capital of $100 million, and in the initial stage, it will invest only with its capital, but plans to expand its investments through financial leveraging. The country's biggest VC, Korea Investment Partners, and KTB Network, which is slated to go public next year, is also betting on the U.S. startup scene. That's all for me today.
All right, as always, thank you very much for that report.
Thanks for having me.
Omicron. Now that's the name of the latest variant of concern according to World Health Organization, as my colleague Yeon-sung mentioned earlier, and so far it has been reported in at least 13 countries. Now there have been no reported cases here in Korea, but authorities are on high alert as they are already battling a resurgence in infections amid the country's exit strategy from the pandemic. For more, I have Dr. Kim Seung-taek from Institute Pasteur Korea. It's good to see you again, Dr. Kim.
Good afternoon.
I also have Professor Kim Moon-gyu from Yonsei University. Welcome back, Professor Kim.
Thank you for having me.
Dr. Kim, we'll start with you then. We are entering week 5 of our exit strategy. What are your thoughts on our current COVID-19 situation?
Well, as mentioned, we are on the 5th week of the phase 1, sort of just living with COVID-19. We have actually spent 4 weeks of running the phase 1. And then so far we have witnessed some increasing number of the number of just confirmed cases of COVID-19. Which was actually just anticipated when we actually start the current living with COVID-19, and then the number of also just severe COVID-19 patients also increased. This is quite just concerning, and then this level of increase, I think somehow just our government, also some experts actually have not just anticipated this level of just increasement. And I think maybe with some further the measures in terms of governments, the oriented just the initiated measures, that maybe this trend will just continue for a while.
Right. And Professor Kim, as Dr. Kim has just mentioned, the number of severe cases is a source of concern for authorities here. And having said that, what can you tell us about medical capacity at your hospital?
The hospital that I work with have a special ward for highly infectious disease, and also the pandemic, it was saturated. There was no real bed. If somebody comes out, there's already somebody waiting for the bed. So it's been saturated for a long time. And from time to time, more patients are waiting in the emergency department. So we have to shut down the emergency department from time to time. So it's a problem for patients without COVID. They have to visit the emergency department, but they cannot enter that area because of this situation. So we have to disinfect every time if there is a confirmed cases, and we don't have enough manpower to hold all those confirmed cases. Well, short-term plan, I would say that we have to continue all the measures that we used to do, like social distancing, booster shots, and I think we need to more facilitate the network of transferring patients. I mean, we used to have that. We have this network sending a patient from hospital A to hospital B, but now I think we need a wider network of transfer from province A to province B. It's already happened in Germany. They transfer by airplane or helicopter to an area that has less severe cases. Long-term plan, well, I think humans are a creature of oblivion. They forget. So current needs are forgotten after years. So if there's something we need right now, that should be prepared even in non-pandemic times. And I would say that there will be ICU medical professionals, ICU facilities, and the reason why we have less of this kind is because of financial issues. So I wish that we can have some kind of support in that area so we can be prepared for the worst.
Right. And staying with such countermeasures, Dr. Kim, these measures are also being addressed at an extensive meeting on this Monday afternoon as we speak. And some of these plans include limiting the validity of vaccine passes and also expanding their requirement among teenagers. What are your thoughts on this?
Well, I think also overall, just the aim of this sort of just living with COVID-19 is that actually we do not care much about now just the total, just the confirmed number of just confirmed cases, but we are actually very much concerned about the number of just the severe COVID-19 because we don't want to just overwhelm our just the healthcare just systems. And then at the same time, we are actually not just, we cannot actually ask for some sacrifices from a certain groups of our society, for example, like some small business owners. So then I think overall, my personal expectation is probably just to maintain the personal, just the current measures, but actually just assessing some very individual just factors that could just affect our just a public, some other public current measures. So that may be, I don't know how possibly we can just assess each individual factors, but somehow that would be just assessed individually, and then which the parameter can be actually just change it to just change the current trend of just transmission right now.
Right. And Professor Kim, what are your thoughts on imposing a circuit breaker?
It depends what does it mean. If we activate some concept of circuit breaker, it will have a big impact on controlling this fourth wave. But what price we have to pay for that? So I would say that most of the hospital will see severe cases, and they are more than age 60 and plus, with some comorbidities. So I think we have to go back to the basic. I mean, get booster shots and wear masks, avoid spaces with poor ventilation and strict social distancing, hand hygiene, all the basic. Actually, it's very sad that we don't know exactly why we have this kind of high numbers. And if we are not planning to activate a circuit breaker, surge will continue for a while, and we need to look back what is going wrong and what we are missing, and figure out what is not followed properly. And that's going to be some key issues for some weeks.
Right. And efforts to fight a resurgence, of course, in COVID-19 cases are also taking place over in South Africa, where researchers recently identified a heavily mutated variant that is currently fueling much global anxiety. For more on this, I have Dr. Richard Lessels at the University of KwaZulu-Natal live on the line. Dr. Lessels, it's been a while, and it's a pleasure to see you again.
Hello.
Let's begin then, Dr. Lessels, with a few words on the rebound in COVID-19 infections in South Africa in recent days that some observers are linking to the newly identified variant Omicron.
Yeah, that's right. We've seen a very rapid resurgence in cases in one particular part of the country, in Gauteng province, which is around Johannesburg and Pretoria. So it's the kind of most densely populated economic hub of the country with a young population. And we've seen some outbreaks in universities and other higher education institutions, and that's then spilled over into the general population. And we can say with some confidence now that seems to be driven by the Omicron variant. And so essentially what we're seeing is the start of a fourth wave in South Africa, unfortunately. And we can see that now starting to spread to the other parts of the country.
How has this latest resurgence, Dr. Lessels, affected perhaps a number of severe cases in South Africa?
Yeah, so that's really the critical question, and unfortunately at the moment it's a bit early to tell. And that's partly because, as I say, this initial resurgence in cases has largely been amongst the younger population, the university students and similar age groups. And that's what we often see in many parts of the world at the start of a wave, that it's often the younger population who are the mixing more, the more sociable. And so, of course, they are at lower risk of being hospitalized and dying anyway, regardless of vaccination status. So we need a bit of time to really understand the effect on hospitalizations and deaths. And that's really one of the critical questions that we're going to be addressing over the next couple of weeks. And particularly if this variant is able to break through the vaccine protection to some extent, we need to know, does that extend to breaking through against severe disease or just against the kind of milder forms of infection?
Right, and those are answers we don't know at the moment. We need to wait for the evidence, right, Dr. Lessels?
That's right. We need to wait and see the data and be clear. There's lots of anecdotes at the moment that have got a lot of attention over the weekend, but from South Africa, from clinicians on the ground who are seeing some mild cases predominantly. But we've tried to caution against kind of taking that as too much at the moment, because as I say, this issue of it's the younger population initially, and you'll be aware there's this time lag between infections becoming severe, needing hospitalization. So you need time to see it in the data.
Right. And Dr. Kim, the Global Health Body, for its part, was quick to declare Omicron a variant of concern. Could you tell us a bit about this?
Well, this was quite unusual, compared to some prior variant concerns. But the sort of just the WHO classification of this, the variants actually starts with the variants under some monitoring. And then this actually develops into the variant of interest. And then the final stage is a variant of concern. And in this way, that we kind of just assess or just classify the potential severity of this coronaviruses, the variants. And then this is actually based on the number of factors, including some potential transmissibility, and then some detrimental or some epidemiology, and then virulence, and then some public health measures, and also including some diagnostics and the vaccines, and also some therapeutics available. And for this vaccine, as many just actually reported just over the 30 of mutation, and this is some of the mutation actually known mutation based on some prior variants, and then some of them are not unknown, and then it's kind of just a combination of all those things. So that's why this is kind of one of the reasons why we are actually concerned about the variant.
Right. And Dr. Lessels, as you mentioned, studies are currently underway and we need to wait for those answers. But based on what you know thus far, what can you share with us about Omicron and the risks it poses?
I mean, I think what we're seeing is that it's spreading very rapidly. And one of the key things to understand is that in the context of South Africa and Gauteng province, it's spreading rapidly in a population that we believe has quite a high level of some immunity. Now, that's a combination of immunity from past infection with the virus and from vaccination. The vaccination coverage is not high. It's only about a third of adults are fully vaccinated. But because of the devastating waves of infection we've had, we think that we have quite high levels of immunity. And so what that's telling us is that this virus is still able to spread very efficiently through the population, despite that level of immunity. And that's what makes us concerned about this combination of the ability to evade parts of the immune protection that we have, and that it's a highly transmissible variant again. And that gives us concern because even if the protection from the vaccines holds up well against severe disease, this virus, if it spreads efficiently through the population, will again be able to find the people in the population that are not yet protected and that are still susceptible to severe disease. And that's a particular worry throughout the region, throughout Africa, where the vaccine coverage is extremely low, much lower than here in South Africa. Only 7% in Africa as a whole are fully vaccinated. And so we have a big concern about the possible impact of this across the continent.
Right. And talking about possible impacts, Professor Kim, what are your thoughts on the possibility of Omicron rendering ineffective our current vaccines?
Well, the mutations are found in S protein, and S protein is the key factor getting infected. And I think we already know it's highly transmissible, and it's going to take some time and meticulous study to make a conclusion whether it is more virulent or not. And if I review about the Delta variant for a while, because I feel like a deja vu. When first we faced the Delta variant, everybody was talking that whether it's going to be more transmissible, was going to be more severe or not. And yes, Delta variant is more virulent for unvaccinated persons. If we compare with Alpha variant, they say you have 2 times higher hospitalization rate in Delta variant infection. The data came from UK. And how about the the unvaccinated people have higher hospitalization, and for vaccinated people, they say there is a breakthrough infection with Delta variant, even though you got vaccinated. Transmission is possible, but they say the period is shorter, so you have less chance to spread out. And big pharmas are not preparing to sell a vaccine for Delta variant. They keep on with the original virus. So what's going to happen with Omicron? We don't know. But I heard on news that Novavax is planning to make a vaccine for Omicron, but it's too early to say. And I think we should continue with all the vaccines we have right now, and all the medications, we have to use it.
Right. And like Novavax, actually, Dr. Kim, vaccine makers like Pfizer and Moderna have also claimed that protection against Omicron may be available early next year. What are your thoughts on this?
Well, depending on what kind of the vaccine technologies we are using, the speed of just manufacturing the new vaccines based on this variant is just possible. For example, mRNA-based vaccines, including the Pfizer vaccine and the Moderna vaccines, can be very rapidly just implemented because basically we are actually injecting the information, the genetic information, to just produce antigens within our body. But however, in the case of the Novavax vaccine, that we actually inject the proteins. So that there's actually, simply speaking, there's an additional layer of just the protection, just the production procedure in the case of the Novavax, just the vaccine. So theoretically, just the mRNA-based vaccines can be made very quickly compared to other just the platform technologies.
I see. Meanwhile, Dr. Lessels, back in South Africa, what efforts are being made by authorities there to counter Omicron?
We heard the president address the nation last night and update the nation on the response. Really, what they're pushing and taking the opportunity to do is to really push the vaccination program again, and to try even harder to engage those that have not yet come forward for vaccination. And that's important because there has been stalling in the rate of vaccination in South Africa, and there are still many people unprotected. There will also be a program of additional doses and booster doses for those most vulnerable, the immunocompromised and the older age groups. In terms of the other public health measures, it's as my colleagues said earlier, it's all the basic public health measures that we know throughout the pandemic and that we know are effective. It's trying to reduce the mixing, it's trying to reduce time in poorly ventilated spaces. We have consistent mask wearing. And at the moment, in terms of kind of stricter regulations, they're taking a watch and wait approach, and to see how the numbers evolve, and particularly to see how much pressure the health system comes under, and the health system all around the country is now being again prepared for another influx of hospitalizations, unfortunately.
Right, and our best wishes, of course, to those on the front lines of this fight against the pandemic, even in South Africa. Dr. Lessels, as always, thank you very much for your thoughts. Professor Kim here in the studio, thank you for your time. And Dr. Kim, thank you for your insights. Right, now, given the latest events on the pandemic front, health authorities worldwide are reiterating calls for vaccinations and boosters among members of the public. Thank you for watching.